Welcome to SF Commercial Property Conversations with Bruce Bean, where Bay Area investments meet expert insights. Get ready to unlock the strategies of commercial real estate success.
So today we have Bryan Devore with us. And Bryan, it's great to have you. You are in the San Diego world. It'd be great to hear how you got into the probate work with residential real estate. So great to have you. Let us know how you got from your LA beginnings to the San Diego probate.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. So, yeah, I've been a residential real estate agent for, August will be 22 years, and was living in LA, moved to San Diego for college. And then when I graduated from college, I decided to stay in San Diego, uh, moved to Orange County for a job, and then came back to San Diego because I loved it here, still love it, and got into real estate at that time. So that was almost 22 years ago that I moved back to San Diego, got into residential real estate, started doing a lot of work with seniors and their families as they were making transitions into, senior living, downsizing, things of that nature. Met a lot of estate planning attorneys and other professionals who work with seniors, and then had a couple situations where the person passed away while I was working with them, and was able to help them with the probate sale for helping the family out, and working with some of these attorneys who had people who needed help with probate. And they'd ask me, "Can you help?" And I said, "Sure." And I realized that if I was going to be doing that work, I should probably become a little bit more skilled at it. And so through the California Association of Realtors, there's a certified probate and trust specialist class. So I took that class and passed it, and a lot of great information. But of course, nothing teaches you like the School of Hard Knocks. So just doing the real world work, and doing the probates for folks. I enjoy doing it because I know it helps families a lot, and doing it wrong can be detrimental to families and what they're going through, and they're already going through an emotional process. So I'm glad I'm able to help them.
So I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you probably prior to death, you hopefully advise them not to go through probate.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. So whenever I'm working with a client, I want to make sure when they're buying a home, for example, that they do have the home in a trust. They want to avoid probate at all costs because literally it costs a lot of money, and it just takes so long. It's a 1 to 2 year process at best, and it drags it out for a family that's already grieving and going through the emotional roller coaster. So anything they can do to avoid probate, they need to do.
So give me a little clue. So you said it takes 1 to 2 years to go through probate versus if you have your estate in a trust, then what happens? It's a much quicker process, I assume.
Yeah, when you have your home in a trust, and I'll just kind of boil it down to just the home versus anything else that the person may have in their estate. But if their home is in a trust, then if it's all titled the correct way, then it just follows the order of what's in the trust. So you have a successor trustee who takes over, who administers the trust, and they follow the directions of what's in the trust. And if it says that this person gets it, that person gets it. If it directs the successor trustee to sell it, then they sell it. You can even designate who you want to sell it for you. So you can spell out pretty much whatever you want within reason in the trust, and then the probate administrator just follows that up. If there is no trust, if the home does have to go to probate, then you have to ideally get an attorney who knows what they're doing, go through the process. Probate administrator has to be appointed by the court. Usually it's a family member, could be a friend, but they have to have a public notice that it's going through probate. And you have to ideally have the person designated with full authority so they can make full decisions. Otherwise, it has to get court approval. Final sale has to get court approval. And just the legal process itself can take such a long time. They did enact something here in San Diego where they said, okay, no, we can't have this taking so long anymore. So they ramped it up a little bit. They added a probate judge into the system. I hear it's getting a little bit more efficient, but still they're just so backlogged because you know, just the silver tsunami. We're seeing the greatest generation and the silent generation, they're passing now, and there's a lot of real estate that is being transferred from one generation to the next. And a lot of people in those generations, they didn't have the right documentation. They didn't have their home in a trust, and so it's going through the probate process. Not ideal for sure.
So you mentioned that as long as they have the house properly titled, what's sort of the one of the mistakes people make in that process when they try and put their house into their trust?
Well, a lot of times they do it right going into it. So they'll buy the home and then immediately put it in the trust. And so you can look up tax records and it'll show the
Ah,
home's in, John Smith Trust. Oftentimes people do a refinance if they have a loan. And when they refinance it, you have to take the home out of the trust, do the refinance, and put it back in the trust. Well, unfortunately, in cases, the first half of that is done properly, but not the second half. It's taken out of the trust, but never put back in. And I've heard of situations where people found out
oh, wow.
after the fact their home was not in the trust. And they said, wait a second, my home was absolutely in the trust. Then you look back on the history and you say, oh, you refinanced and you never had the home put back in the trust. So, and that's really on the attorney who does not do what they're supposed to do. So, but it's important, obviously, as the client, to follow up to make sure everything is done properly. So that's just one example of, even though the person had a trust and the home was in the trust at one point, where things can go sideways quickly.
So let me see if I understand this. So if you do have your house in a trust, you said that a probate person does get involved, but that you don't have to go through the court. Explain that to me a little more.
No, so it wouldn't be a probate person who would get involved. In a trust, you have the trustee, and usually it's the owner of the trust. So, for example, I have a trust. I am the trustee of my trust. I have a successor trustee, my wife. So, if I were to pass and she was still alive, she would then take over the responsibilities of controlling the trust. And in my trust, if it was in my wishes in my trust to sell the home, for example, or sell my share, then she could do that. But and all the rules and everything you want to have done will be in the trust, and the successor trustee will make those decisions. So it wouldn't go to probate. The decision maker is the successor trustee.
So yeah. So legally, you don't have to go into the courts at all, basically.
Correct.
Yeah. You avoid that whole nightmare altogether.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So those listening, please put your house into trust. And now that you make me understand the refinancing part, if you've recently or previously refinanced, be sure you got it back into your trust.
Absolutely.
That's interesting. So why does the bank force you to take it out of the trust? That's an interesting question I'd never run into before.
So the entity that owns the home is the trust. The entity that's getting the loan is the person. So a trust cannot refinance a home. So you got to
Oh,
take it
okay.
out of the trust. So now the
Oh,
homeowner owns the home and can refinance their loan. Once that's completed, now it can be put back in the trust.
oh, so there's this two-step basically that you have to take to make sure it gets back into the trust.
Correct.
So how often does that happen? It sounds like quite frequently.
I've only heard of it happening a couple times. I hope it's not frequent that it doesn't go back in the trust. I've heard of it happening a couple times, but most attorneys do the right thing, and they have a checklist of the stuff they're supposed to do, including putting it back in the trust. So I think it's the anomaly when it doesn't happen.
So basically you need to contact your attorney that drew up your trust when you refinance, essentially. And
Yeah.
hopefully the title insurance company warns you about this, or the real estate agent involved warns you about this.
Well, if you're doing a refinance, then the mortgage lender will be guiding you through the process, And so that definitely needs to, that person is sort of the point person, but you definitely want to work with your estate planning attorney just to make sure all I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
Are there any other pitfalls that you might warn people about in terms of making sure their trust is active and working at the moment they want it to?
Yeah, a lot of people do a trust and they think they're done, and then life happens, you know. I mean, you know, you do a trust and then 2 years later you have a child. Okay,
Mm,
now you got to redo your trust, or 2 years later you get married. Okay, any life situation needs you need to address the trust. You buy something, you know, a major asset, you sell an asset, uh, you are no longer on speaking terms with one of your children, you know, so you got to make sure that it's updated. You want to have eyes on it. I mean, I recommend, and again, I'm not a estate planning attorney, so I can't give legal advice, but you know, I would recommend you have eyes on your trust every year and just think back. Did anything change this year? You know, likely not. But if you wait 10 years, I'm
mm.
sure stuff has taken place. So somewhere I would say between 1 and 10 years is how often you should be reviewing it. And most good estate planning attorneys would follow up with you and recommend that and want to do that with you because that's the value. A lot of the value that the attorney provides is not just the initial drafting of the documents, but ongoing maintenance.
You know, that's interesting. You're obviously making me think I need to go back and look at our trust and figure it out, and because it's been a while, and quite frankly, the attorney we used is now retired, and so he's not following up, and one of his associates is not. So anyway, that's you know, it's ongoing business for them. They should be doing their job, but
Well, I have a lot of clients who I'm working with, helping them sell their home and maybe move into independent living or assisted living. And we ask, and the home is in a trust, and they can't find a copy of their trust. The attorney's now retired, living in who knows where. No one can find anything. And it could become a real problem because if you can't produce a copy of the trust, then title cannot clear the home to sell.
oh
And
wow.
it gets to the point where the court has to make that final decision sometimes that, you know, okay, yes, we understand it's in a trust. You can't find the trust. You know, they have enough information to say, okay, yes, this person, you know, can sell it, but it becomes very messy. So it's always good to keep checking on it, keep updating it, keep good records of the trust. Uh, I have a copy of my own trust in my home, and I have a friend of mine who is the second successor trustee. He has a copy of it. So it's good to have it out there because you never know what could happen.
There's no reason to record the trust, right? Can you
What do you
record
mean
the trust?
record?
Well, with the county assessor or somebody. No.
No, no,
Yeah.
the county doesn't get involved in those things because it's a private matter.
Right. Right. So it's not something you record with the county,
Right.
but you need to record it or make sure it's in your vault or wherever you keep your possessions, and
Hmm.
also someplace else maybe where somebody else can look at it.
Right. Flash drive on the cloud with passwords. Yeah. Wherever you can.
Yeah. You make sure you can find it again or
Yep.
somebody can find it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So what's happening in the world of litigation and probate? Is that changing at the moment?
I'm seeing, in talking to a lot of the estate planning attorneys who I work with, there's a lot more litigation going on. You know, people didn't do the documents properly, or people contesting the will, contesting the trust. You know, mom liked me best, or, you know, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I'm hearing stories of stuff like that. And again, it's just sheer numbers, the sheer number of people who are passing away with or without the correct documents. Obviously, it's easier to contest and fight when it's in a probate because there's no guiding document like a trust. But you hear trust litigation all the time. You know, people will fight for whatever they believe in, whether it's correct or not. They'll do it.
No, and well, and I think as you probably well know, and I think I know very well, the families tend to fight over real estate a lot. So it's a big issue. If there's commercial real estate involved, which I'm involved in, there's always battles in the families about who gets what and how it goes together and, what's the capital gains and all the different things
Yeah.
involved.
Someone once told me that in the state of California, real estate is the number one thing that lawsuits are filed over is real estate.
That doesn't surprise me a bit. I think that's probably true. In my experience, I would think that was definitely be the case. And a
Yeah.
lot of my friends are attorneys, and I think they battle over real estate all the time.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal. So give us just a quick summary before we end here. What's the best approach to try and avoid going into probate, just to kind of reiterate this?
Yeah. I always recommend to people get a really good estate planning attorney, and I'll make recommendations for people to talk with them and see what fits. But absolutely have a good estate planning attorney who writes up a very good trust that includes all your legal documents. And it's not just like your house and your belongings, but it's your medical directives, your financial power of attorney. All those things need to be in there. And so, yeah, again, I'm not a estate planning attorney. I can't give the advice, but my advice as a person, as a real estate agent who works with folks, get a good estate planning attorney who can draft these documents, review these documents, and in the end, you're going to be much better off and stand a much better chance of having to avoid that whole mess of probate.
So just one last question. Is there any little tip you might give someone about how to pick an attorney, particularly an estate planning attorney, an attorney that's going to put your trust together?
I mean, I always think recommendations from people are good. Who you feel comfortable with, because this is someone you may grow with over time. So it's a lot of it's who you're comfortable with, and their experience in doing this. And again, recommendations I think are really helpful for sure.
So, Bryan, if someone is looking for a real estate agent in this area, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so my phone number is a super easy cell phone number. It's 760-908-3838. And my email address is Bryan, Bryan, at DevoreRealtyGroup.com.
Fantastic. Well, Bryan, it's been fantastic talking to you. I'm going to go back and look at our trust now, all because of this conversation, and I suspect other people will be doing that also.
Sounds good. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on today's journey through the SF commercial real estate scene. Ready to share your story? Visit sfcommercialconversations.com/guest. Your insights could lead the next conversation.